The medical bay of the constellation's edge had never been designed for this kind of chaos. Chief Medical Officer Zelthara, a Corvaxian with fur crystalline eyes and skin that shimmered like oil on water, had performed over 3,000 surgeries in her 40-year career. She had reassembled shattered exoskeletons, regrown organs for methane breathers, and once extracted a quantum parasite from a being made entirely of coherent light. But nothing had prepared her for Lyra. The human lay on the operating table, her pale skin slick with perspiration, her chest rising and falling in rapid, shallow breaths. A piece of shrapnel from the hull breach had lodged itself deep in her abdomen, millimeters from her primary circulatory pump, what humans call the heart. The wound was serious, but not fatal. Not yet. Sedation administered, announced Nurse Qual, a six-limbed Vendari whose species had pioneered anesthesiology across three-star systems. Standard dosage for a being of her mass. Zelthara made the first incision. Lyra's eyes snapped open. Insufficient, Zelthara said calmly, though her secondary hearts skipped a beat. Increased by 40%. Qual injected another dose. Lyra's fingers twitched. Her jaw clenched. When Zelthara's scalpel went deeper, probing for the shrapnel, Lyra's back arched off the table, and she screamed that it wasn't the scream that shocked them. Species across the galaxy vocalized pain in various frequencies. It was the sound itself. Raw. Primal. A sound that bypassed logic and struck directly at the ancient prey instincts buried deep in every evolved creature. Even Zelthara, who had trained for decades to maintain composure, felt her hands tremble. Increase sedation to maximum safe levels, she ordered. Already there, Qual replied, his voice strained. She's metabolizing it faster than, Lyra screamed again, louder this time. And that's when the doors to the operating room burst open. Hiko entered first, a blur of midnight black fur and amber eyes. The young Zykar cub was no larger than a Terran wolf pup, but her species were apex predators on a death world 3 classifications higher than Earth. Her claws, still kitten-soft but sharp enough to score steel, clicked against the sterile floor. Behind her came Nox, slightly smaller, his fur a deep charcoal gray with streaks of silver. Both cubs had their ears pinned back, their pupils dilated to full moons. "Get them out," Zelthara commanded, not looking up from the surgery. "Security to medical bay, immediately." But the cubs didn't attack. They didn't growl or bare their developing fangs. Instead, they did something far more disturbing. They sat. Directly beside the operating table, flanking Lyra's head, they planted themselves like sentinels and refused to move. When Security Officer Thrain, a hulking Brigothian with skin like volcanic rock, tried to approach, Hiko released a sound that made everyone in the room freeze. It was a warning chirp, high-pitched and resonant, the kind young Zykars made only when protecting their pack from mortal danger. Thrain, who had subdued armed insurgents and wrestled zero-gravity brawlers, took a step back. I can't remove them without sedation," he admitted. "And sedating Zykar cubs requires authorization from—" "Forget it," Zelthara snapped. "Just keep them from interfering." She returned to the surgery, her hands moving with practiced precision despite the absurdity of the situation. Lyra's screams had subsided to whimpers, though whether from the medication finally taking effect or simple exhaustion, Zelthara couldn't tell. The human's hand, pale and trembling, reached out blindly. Nox moved his head forward, pressing his small, furry skull against Lyra's palm. Her fingers curled weakly into his fur. Immediately, her breathing steadied. The tension in her muscles eased, if only slightly. "Fascinating," Qual whispered. "Her cortisol levels are dropping." Hiko, not to be outdone, leaned against Lyra's other side, her rough tongue licking the human's forearm in small, careful strokes. Zelthara had read the reports about humans and their bizarre tendency to bond with other species, but seeing it in practice was another matter entirely. The cubs, who should have been terrified by the sounds and smells of the medical bay, remained absolutely still, their focus entirely on the suffering creature between them. "Shrapnel located," Zelthara announced. "Beginning extraction." This was the dangerous part. One wrong move and the fragment could sever the artery. Lyra's body went rigid. Her breath caught. And then, impossibly, she spoke. "Sakai," she slurred. her words barely coherent through the haze of pain and inadequate sedation. Sakai babies. I'm okay. She wasn't okay. Zelthara could see the readings, could see the human teetering on the edge of shock. But Lyra kept murmuring those words, her hands buried in the cub's fur, even as tears streamed down her temples. They came because she's in pain, Thrain said quietly from his position by the door. Zykar's bond with their pack. She raised them from eggs after their mother was killed in the attack on Station Kepler. To them, she's not human. She's family. Zelthara extracted the shrapnel in one smooth motion. Blood welled from the wound, but the artery held. She worked quickly, sealing tissue, applying regenerative gel, closing the incision with practiced efficiency. Throughout it all, the cubs never moved, never made a sound except for the low, rumbling purr that Zykars used to comfort their young. When the final stitch was in place and Lyra's vital signs stabilized, Zelthara finally allowed herself to exhale. She stepped back from the table, her hands steady again, and regarded the strange tableau before her. A human who should have been unconscious but remained aware through sheer stubborn will, and two predator cubs who had appointed themselves her guardians. Recovery room, Zelthara ordered, and the cubs stay with her. That's not a request, it's a medical necessity. Her recovery will be faster with them present. As the orderlies carefully transferred Lyra to a gurney, Kiko and Nox followed, their small bodies pressed against the sides. Lyra's eyes fluttered open one last time, unfocused but aware. Good babies, she whispered. Such good babies. Later, when Zelthara filed her report, she included a new notation in the human medical database. Species demonstrates extreme pain tolerance when motivated by emotional attachment. Sedation requirements may vary significantly based on psychological state. Recommend presence of bonded companions during medical procedures when possible. She also added, though she would never admit it aloud, a personal observation. Humans were the strangest, most contradictory species she had ever encountered. Fragile enough to require such primitive medical intervention, yet strong enough to endure conscious surgery for the sake of two orphan predators who saw her not as prey, but as home. In the recovery room, as Lyra finally slipped into true sleep, Kiko and Nox curled up on either side of her, their purring a gentle rhythm in the quiet dark. The human who had screamed during surgery now smiled in her dreams, her hands still tangled in soft fur, surrounded by the family she had chosen and who had chosen her in return. And that, Zelthara reflected, was perhaps the most human thing of all.